Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back for Day 2 of the National Mentoring Summit. Please welcome Assistant Attorney of Justice Programs, the Honorable Karol V. Mason.
That's really funny. Now I know why they wouldn't tell me what the song was. But I'd like to think that I'm more than money, but we'll see. So good morning, everybody. I hear that you guys not only like to start on time, that you guys show up early. So I don't know what it is you guys have. You need to share it with the rest of the world. But thank you for being here this morning, and thank you for being here all week. Some of you I know came in on Wednesday, and it's a wonderful, wonderful tribute to your passion that you show up in DC right after a snowstorm of the century and come to do this work, so thank you. I'm delighted to be here and thrilled to be among so many advocates, researchers, policymakers, and most importantly, mentors. Raise your hand if you're a mentor. Now, so those of you who didn't raise your hand, everybody's a mentor. Everybody's hand should have gone up. How many of you have been mentored in your life? That's right, everybody's hand ought to go up. So there are more than 1,000 of you here, and it's wonderfully exciting to see this show of commitment on behalf of our kids. I want to thank our friends at Mentor for organizing this summit and for the terrific work that they do managing our National Mentoring Resource Center, so let's thank them. Because unlike many of us, they really had to work through the storm to make sure this came off the way it did, so we're really appreciative of their commitment. It's a privilege, and I mean that, it is a privilege to talk even briefly about an issue that I care so deeply about. Our mission at the Office of Justice Programs is centered on improving the fairness and effectiveness of our justice system, and a key part of that is expanding opportunities for our young people. Expanding opportunities for our young people, giving them the chance that they all need and deserve to contribute to our communities and achieve their full potential, which is to all of our benefit. To my mind, there's nothing better that we can do for our youth than ensure that they have a chance to connect with dedicated, energetic, which you guys clearly are, energetic and well-trained mentors. The guidance and direction of a caring and respected adult is the key to keeping a young person on a path of responsible, productive behavior headed to a bright future. And this isn't a matter of opinion, as who are the researchers in the room? I know you're here. Don't be shy. But we know from the research that folks have done and evaluations of mentoring programs that they make a difference in the lives of young people. They boost self-esteem, strengthen relationships with parents and peers, improve school performance, reduce violence, drug use, and other risky behaviors. For many young people, this guidance is missing in their lives. For those kids, I feel passionately that we have a responsibility at the federal level, at the local level, and more importantly, at an individual level, to get them the support and direction they need. I'm proud that the Office of Justice Programs has provided strong support for mentoring efforts, and it's more than money. Through the leadership of Bob Listenby, Bob, raise your hand or stand up. Bob Listenby is the administrator of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And you all couldn't have a more passionate advocate. And we're the folks from OJJDP who are in the room. I know there's some of you here somewhere. You can raise your hands. Thank you guys for the wonderful work that you do. So yes, we do give out money. Since 2011, we've made more than $377 million in funding available for local and national mentoring programs and mentoring-related research. I heard a woo back there. Yeah, that's a lot of money. It's not enough. I know it's not enough. But the funding that we do have supports a variety of services in communities across the country, including programs aimed at Native American youth, child victims of sex trafficking, yes, and children of incarcerated parents and young incarcerated fathers. If we can reach these youth at an early age and provide them with the help and the skills they need, we can give them a fresh start and put them on the path to success. I believe that mentoring is about healthy development. It's about greater opportunity, the kind of opportunity that's the hallmark of the President's My Brother's Keeper initiative. Now, this is a test, and I really hope you all pass. How many people know about My Brother's Keeper? Oh, hallelujah, this is great. There are some times that people don't raise their hands. All of you ought to know about it because you're key to that initiative. Mentoring is about second chances and new beginnings, and for many, the first chance they never had. And mentoring is about living up to the ideals of justice, fairness, and the possibility that all of us in this room represent. So I want to thank you all. You're going to hear from a wonderful panel today, and I'm going to come down and join you all because being out here and learning from you all and seeing you all and picking up on your energy and your enthusiasm and passion for this work is what drives me every day. And for those of you who don't know, I have a ticking clock. I expire on January 20th, 2017, and then I'm going to be on that side of the table with you guys. So I want you to keep doing this great work because I want to be continue to be partners with you even when I leave this job. So thank you for the wonderful work that you do.
Please welcome Senior Director of External Affairs, Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, Diane Quest.
How's everybody doing on Friday morning? Really? How's everybody doing on Friday morning? Excellent. You get to go home today, so there's solitude in that. So I'm really excited to be with you again this morning. We have a really thoughtful and meaningful panel that we're going to bring out with a pretty big topic of interest. It comes out of a lot of the news coverage that we've all seen over the last year, really more than our fair share of news coverage, on communities that are in strife and with a focus on the relationship between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve, where tensions have really been at an all-time high. This, of course, is spurred by the tragic deaths of young people of color, and the dialogue has repeatedly turned to the need to bring attention to the resources and support that youth in our communities need as a means of really addressing some of the issues that are at the heart of the tensions that we've been seeing. Our panel this morning is going to explore the role of strategic youth engagement and support in helping our communities to begin some of the healing process. And we did a test run of this panel actually over the summer in Baltimore and had a really phenomenal conversation. So I'm excited to be able to engage in this dialogue and bring it to you all this morning. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. They'll come out and then we'll get right into it. Yasmine Arrington is the founder of ScholarCHIPS, which is an organization that provides scholarships to teens with incarcerated parents. Yasmine became a 2010 fellow in the Learn Serve International program in Washington, D.C. As a participant in the program, she was challenged to find a need within her community that she wanted to help solve. At that time, Yasmine and her grandmother were searching for college scholarships, and they discovered that there really weren't any scholarships for teens with incarcerated parents. Today in the U.S., more than 2 million children have a parent in prison. Yasmine gathered together a group of adults in her life that she trusted to help turn her idea into a reality. All of them are still on the executive board to this day, and to date, ScholarCHIPS has awarded over $80,000 in college scholarships and has touched the lives of 23 scholars. Arrington is a 2016 NAACP Image Award Hometown Champion nominee and Miss District of Columbia USA 2016. So please help me in welcoming Yasmine. Hello. Our next panelist, Devone Boggan, currently serves as Community Services Director for the City of Richmond in California and is responsible for the city's gun violence intervention and recreation portfolios. Prior to his appointment to Community Services Director in September of 2014, he served as Neighborhood Safety Director and Director of the city's Office of Neighborhood Safety for 7 years. Under his leadership in that role, the city experienced a 76% reduction in gun violence between 2007 and 2014. Prior to coming to the city of Richmond, he served as the Policy Director for Safe Passages in Oakland, California, as part of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation's Urban Health Initiative. During his career, Devone has provided consultation to numerous municipal governments and school districts, assisting in the creation of a variety of citywide mentoring initiatives, as well as violence prevention and intervention strategies that all address chronic youth violence in urban settings. Please welcome Devone. Our next panelist may be familiar to many of you. Becky James Hatter serves as President and Chief Executive Officer of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Eastern Missouri, serving the broad St. Louis area. She more recently committed to serving on the Ferguson Commission, which I'm sure you all have heard of. It's a diverse community group tasked with studying the underlying social and economic issues and conditions that were underscored by the unrest in the wake of the death of Michael Brown. Her participation is anchored in her belief that there is a path forward to building more trusting relationships and greater opportunities for young people. Please welcome Becky. Good morning. And our final panelist joining this morning is Brandon Scott. Brandon is a Baltimore City Council member, a community leader, and a lifelong resident of Baltimore City. His political awareness has steadily grown and become more focused as he has lived in Baltimore's neighborhood and worked with Baltimore's citizens throughout his academic and professional career in public service and civic engagement. And it's exciting to note that he began his career with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Maryland. He has a very deep understanding of the power and the impact of adult-youth relationships in bridging community divides. Please welcome Brandon this morning. For joining us bright and early on a Friday morning. We have a very excited crowd here this morning. I wanted to start with a question for each of you, and we can just go down the line. We'll start on the end here. If you can just tell us a little bit about your role and your experience in working in communities to heal in the wake of some of the very recent public and widely covered tragic events that we've been watching in the news.
Well, good morning. Thank you all for, good morning. Thank you all for being here. ScholarCHIPS is a nonprofit that I started back in 2010 as a junior in high school because I am the child of an incarcerated parent. And as you heard and as you may know, as mentors, over 2 million youth in the U.S. have a parent in prison. And we provide college scholarships and mentoring and a peer support network for those youth. And for me, in relation to the recent tragedies that have been happening and occurring, a lot of shootings of our African American males, while I believe my role might be a little more indirect, but it's very proactive, because while I am not one of those that are protesting, and I may not be holding a sign that Black Lives Matter, but the ScholarCHIPS movement in and of itself, telling these youth that you can be anything you want to be. We're here to support you with money, with resources, with mentors, I think there's a lot of strength in that, and also gearing up and training these young people to become advocates themselves and for other youth with incarcerated parents, for their families, and for their communities. So definitely helping to heal communities and strengthen families and communities.
Thank you, Yasmine. And I think you know a little bit something about prevention, right?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I want to know first, whose idea was it to have me on a 5:30 in the morning panel?
You're still on West Coast time.
All these East Coast people. I'm sleepy. It is great to be here. It's good to see everyone, too. This is just an amazing thing to see how much this work has grown across the country. As Neighborhood Safety Director for the City of Richmond, I have the honor of being able to provide leadership in our city to reduce if not end firearm assaults and associated deaths. The Office of Neighborhood Safety is the first office of its kind in the country in that a city government said, we've got to do something very different, something dramatically different about how we address the epidemic, the historical epidemic rates of gun violence in our city. And so the city and its leadership decided that law enforcement alone was certainly not producing the kinds of results that the city felt were necessary as it related to stopping the carnage of young men of color in our city. And so it created a non-law enforcement government agency, a new agency, not a project of the mayor's office or the city administrator's office, but a new government agency with one single focus, and that's to reduce firearm assault and associated death. We've been doing that for the last 8 years, and as a result of the city's commitment to getting it right, our city has experienced 76% reduction in firearm-related homicides. And a 66% reduction in firearm-related assaults, and we've been able to sustain that. And so we're really excited about what we believe, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, what we believe is the direct product, the direct result of young men, those closest to the proximity of gun violence, making different decisions, healthier decisions about how they handle the inevitable conflicts that they've traditionally had to handle on their own. And that's why we have the reductions we've had. They've made better decisions. We've simply provided them a platform that helps guide those decisions.
Thank you, Devone. And Becky, you've certainly been at the heart of some of the stories that we've been watching, and obviously long before that already on the ground working on prevention and mentoring, but now taking that and hopefully influencing and providing direction to the commission that you're on.
Good morning. So Big Brothers and Big Sisters, I've been part of Big Brothers Big Sisters for, I think, I'm somewhere between 26 and 28 years. I've lost count, a long-time big sister. And so I understand, like all of you, that it's about kids at the end of the day. That's what we've got to focus on. And that certainly came to light in Ferguson. Michael Brown was a child, an 18-year-old young boy. And we need to recognize that. I think we also, as a community, the Ferguson Commission was not immediately put in place by our governor. It was young people protesting in the streets of Ferguson that everyone thought young people were going to give up and pack up and go home after about 72 hours and we could get back to business as usual. And St. Louis young protesters stayed in the streets. The Ferguson Commission was seated on November the 18th. So it brings me back to what we're talking about. It's about kids. It's young people that brought us to this place today, and it's going to be young people that get us out of this. Those of us, the adults, I believe we've got to support them, guide them, love them, and coach them, but get behind them. And so this work is important. They need mentors. They need champions. They're the future. And I don't say that lightly. I say it because it's the truth. And then the last thing I'll say, and we'll get to other things, is St. Louis is very much in this conversation. The report was written, published, and it's out, but the conversation is very alive in our community. There are things that are happening that I would have thought after the report was over, we would put it up, but the young people said, no, we will work on it. So lots to talk about there, but it's about the kids.
Great, thank you. And Brandon, you know, you started your career in mentoring at a Big Brothers Big Sisters and now serve the public through your role as council member, and you know, experienced a really tumultuous time in 2015. One of the things that you saw come out of that was kind of an outpouring of people wanting to volunteer as mentors. So there's that's great, but how do we, leverage that and make sure that there's some follow through?
I guess for me, good morning, everyone. And I would just like to thank you for allowing me to have at least an hour away from the word snow, so thank you very much for that. I think for me, April was as you said, it's a very unfortunate thing what happened, but for me, the aftermath of that is basically an opportunity for folks like myself and people in the work to say, hello, we've been saying this for a long time. Thank you for waking up finally, waking the giant, the sleeping giant, for people to understand that these young people need help. No matter if it's Baltimore, Ferguson, New York, wherever you are, these young people need help. And more than anything, yes, as a legislator, I get to do all the fun or things that people think are great. Yes, I was on a committee that picked the body cameras that Baltimore police officers are going to wear. That's great. But at the end of the day, we have to get down to what's very important. That's that human element, that relationship that young people have with adults, that relationship that young people have with police officers. And that's where it is for me. I was able to partner, actually, even though we had April, and even though we were screaming it, I always like to liken myself to a surge protector, right? Because I'm a legislator. For some reason, the media likes to hear me talk, so I tell people, if you have a mission that I believe in, tell me. I'll get it out there in some way or another. So I was able to work with Big Brother, Big Sisters in Baltimore to push people, because we had a lot of people say they wanted to mentor. But if you know, especially men, sorry, brothers and sisters, if you're a man, typically, you don't really want to mentor. You just like the idea of mentoring. So you got to keep that pressure on, keep the pressure up on them. I'm infamous for saying on TV, you're not a man if you don't mentor. Those kind of things that get people upset, because that's what you have to do in order to keep people understanding. And we've also been able to do some other great things that we were already doing, but they're just heightening it for us. Myself, I'm the co-founder of a group, 300 Men March. We have been operating for 3 years, but we started a youth brigade after that. We actually had them march from Baltimore to D.C. with us this summer. And we pay young men, train them up to be violence interrupters in their own community. So just have to do a bunch of different things, but more and more people have starting to see that we have to invest time and human capital is the most important thing with these young people.
Thank you, Brandon. There's a thread here that, young people were very engaged in these issues, and some people thought they would go away, 72 hours and they would go away. What are some of the key strategies, youth engagement strategies, for taking that energy and that outrage and turning it into a movement, and engaging the young people in helping to make the change that they want to see? I'll start with you, Brandon.
I think that what you have to do with this energy, and it's not just young people, with this energy around these issues, we have to galvanize that and get it away from, we were talking backstage about getting away from pitting issue against issue. Because I always say that my city, Baltimore, is a 40-passenger bus right now. And every seat on that bus represents an issue wrong with our city that needs to be completely and holistically addressed if we're going to get to that end destination of the best Baltimore possible. What we couldn't at least afford right now is to have 40 people fighting over the steering wheel, meaning my issue is more important than yours. Police brutality is the most important. Education is the most important. Mentoring is the most important. All of them are just as important. And with these young people, the young people, just like us, some people are more interested in one issue. We have to take them and get them in there and understand, listen, focus on this issue. This is your issue. Have you work on this issue. Don't put the blinders on. Don't worry about what everyone else is saying about the issue, because they have to understand that as long as we're fighting people doing the work or fighting with each other, then we're all losing. Because even if we get to that point, of the end destination, if now we've lost 15 seats along the way, guess what? We're still in the same position that we were before. So for me, it's directly doing that, having young people, training up through 300 Youth Corps, training them up through my Second Saturday Leadership Academy, showing them how to be multifaceted and dealing with issues around the same time, but also then supporting different groups. Even if that group disagrees with the purpose of my group, I understand that, hey, look, I might not be able to do that all the time, but you are. You know, myself or some members of my group, 300 Men March, don't get along with a group in Baltimore called Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, right? But I love them. We don't always agree, and I have to support them because I know their mission is just as important, and what we cannot do is have these young people just take this energy and go away. We have to harness their energy into positivity.
Becky?
Yeah, so, and I'm speaking strictly about Ferguson Commission this morning, but I was the chairman of the Child Wellbeing and Education Equity Work Group, which produced a number of recommendations. So the Ferguson Commission produced 189 recommendations in 4 different categories, ranging from race reconciliation to school-to-prison pipelines, et cetera, 189 recommendations. We prioritized 30. That's the 30 seats or 40 seats on the bus. Those are still a lot of issues for this community. But specifically speaking about mentoring, one of the calls to action was regarding mentors, this real understanding that coming out of Ferguson, that again, it is about young people. Every single recommendation was written for young people, and it was a combination of policies, serious policies that needed to change the region for the future. But in the mentoring area, there were 2 major calls to action that are now being put in place for all of our institutions, whether it is government, universities, corporations, to really fast-track mentoring with policies for paid time off, up to 50 hours. And so we're now trying to put in place, actually I'm going home, there's a big dinner with corporate leaders tonight to see how many of them are going to bite on that and lead in that space. You're talking about thousands of people that could be impacted by that. And then they also call for the early warning systems. ABC Today is a part of what we do, but working directly with the school districts to understand who are the kids that are having attendance behavior and course performance, reading and math issues, and how do we get the best services directly there to them. So these integrated supports. So out of the 189, right now for me at Big Brothers Big Sisters, it's pressing more mentors, more early warning systems so that we can get there and really help them right there where they are.
And Devone, you alluded to this earlier, but I know you know a little something about really working and directly engaging the young people to get at the root cause of some of the issues.
Yeah, you know, I think it's crazy to think that you're going to actually solve what appears to be an intractable, unsolvable mission impossible without, in fact, engaging directly the young men most responsible for it. As partners, from a non-punitive standpoint. So you've got to be able to sort of take on a partnership role with these young men and acknowledge the asset and experience and expertise they bring to the table, and you've got to leverage that. You know, I would also say you've got to pay attention to the data and then be honest about what the data says. When I showed up in the city of Richmond, the data told us that over a 20-year period in a city, maybe 98,000 people, we had more than 746 men of color die as a result of gun violence. Most of them were under the age of 25 years old. That was 1 point. 2, millions of dollars raised in our city, so-called to reduce gun violence. Rarely did any of those resources meet and or reach the young men closest to that challenge. And as a leader in this office, we made a decision that that would not happen under our watch. We were going to make sure that more of the resources actually touched these young men. And I'll talk about how that happens a little bit later. But the first city government employees that I hired for the Office of Neighborhood Safety were 3 young men who the community told me were active firearm offenders who'd avoided inform this office's strategies, just through the experience. And we had some experiences, shootings, victims of shootings, suspected being the persons who perpetrated the shooting, a lot of hospital visits over that period of time. But through all of that, conversations were happening about what works and what doesn't work. So when we talk about youth engagement, I would argue and encourage that we need to be very specific about what the issue is that we're saying that we want to effectively address, and then consult with, in partnership, those young people closest to the issue. The most lethal young men in our city are directing the work of this Office of Neighborhood Safety, and that's made the difference. It's the difference.
Thank you, Yasmine.
I certainly agree in terms of strategic youth engagement and helping to heal and change and transform communities. We're actually seeing a lot of this, and most of it you will not see on the news. You know, with all of the organizations that you all are a part of, that you help to lead the youth, it's certainly many different avenues to engage them in this process. But what I have been discovering and learning is that, and I think I might be aging out a little bit of the youth group, hopefully not too much, but 22 turning 23, but these youth, you know, my generation, the generation after and coming after, they're very passionate. They're go-getters. They want to see change. They don't want to settle. You know, they really, really don't. And there are a lot of them that are creating change already in their communities through Mentor and Peace First Prize. There are so many organizations, Learn, Serve International in Washington, D.C. These youth are really doing amazing things. And on a more concrete level, strategic youth engagement to heal communities and make change looks like, for example, making those YouTube videos. Please, police brutality and shootings of young African-American males has been going on since forever. You know, after hangings, you know, then the shootings. But what's making the difference, part of that, this movement, is that we have camera phones. And youth are whipping out those phones and they're recording. They're speaking out. They're with the movement such as Black Lives Matter, and also I would encourage in terms of youth engagement, strategic youth engagement to make change and heal communities also looks like us pushing them. Yes, college is not for everybody, right? However, I am a big advocate of higher education and professional degrees because there are still so many fields that we don't have enough diversity in people of color. So these youth, you know, and they're doing it, but we need more of it, going into fields, becoming lawyers and doctors and stem cell researchers, and becoming, you know, training to become CEOs and CFOs and executive directors. And you all, a lot of you have 15, 20, 30, 40, maybe even years of this experience. So I think the most valuable thing that you can do in addition to those one-on-one mentoring and those group mentoring sessions is to actually provide that advice and that training, or send them places so they can learn this, because, I mean, knowledge is power. If we don't know, we can do what we know how to do, but there are certain things you must be taught so that you can replicate. So
wonderful. Devone, I want to ask you from your lens, because you have, you know, a very distinct program. How do you engage the community in dialogue around this, and how do you rally them? Because I'm sure there's been some very interesting dialogue around the approach that you've taken.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I will give you a very simple answer. I engage them with results. And as I talk about sort of what we do, you'll understand how this could be seen as controversial, what we're doing, and sometimes it's one, having access to the very individuals who make the difference, these young men, but also the results that they produce make it less likely that folks are going to argue against what you're doing and what you're accomplishing. I think I should say that the second hire, we created a new classification inside city government called the Neighborhood Change Agent. And the requisite for a neighborhood change agent inside city government, the MQs, required that this individual have a criminal background. Listen, have a criminal background and in the area of firearm offenses.
Amen.
A city government vested employee. Before ban the box, right? That's change right there. That's serious about getting at the issue. And I remember the Human Resources Department within the city of Richmond went nuts when I proposed. Right? But the city manager today, 8 years later, would tell you that it hasn't been a revolving door of employees. In fact, I think what has made us successful in part is being that most of those individuals we hired in February of 2008 remain city employees with the Office of Neighborhood Safety. Just an exceptional group of talented assets that we decided we value and we're going to recycle and leverage as best we can. We created, the next crazy thing we did is we created a postgraduate-like fellowship designed specifically for active, lethal firearm offenders. Non-mandated. Now, most people don't know this, but 7 out of 10 individuals who perpetrate a firearm crime don't go to prison, avoid sustained criminal consequences. Yes, 6 out of 10 cats that shoot somebody are walking in our neighborhoods, usually untouched by anything but law enforcement, and quite frankly, they don't see it as a positive, healthy touch. So we created a healthy touch, directed and informed by them. I think that's been the greatest asset, is whatever we're doing is being informed by the user group. And there are 7 elements, and I'll get through them really quickly. But the first one is you're going to get touched every day by our mentors. Attention-intensive mentoring every day, multiple times a day, multiple people touching you every day, engaging you where you are, and in that moment, what can we do to help you? Every day. On Sundays, too, and even when it rains. 2, we're going to make sure you have a life map. Now, I won't get into what that life map is, but you're going to help us create your life map. We're not simply going to give it to you and say, go do it. We're going to take you by the hand as a surrogate caregiver and help you walk through your life map, help you have some accomplishments with that life map. 3, we're going to connect you to every social service opportunity that we can find and help you access. But we're not going to refer you. Why? Because we know that you're less likely to go, even if you have the best intention of going. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you by the hand, walk you to the door, and we will sit there and go through that process with you until you say to us, your mentors, your surrogate caregivers, I'm comfortable, I'm cool, I can handle this. 4 and 5, these are some of the most controversial elements of our 7-element fellowship. 4, after 6 months of your non-mandated 18-month fellowship, you become eligible for a privileged stipend, whereas you can raise or earn, based on the accomplishments in your life map or your participation levels, you can earn up to $1,000 a month for 9 of the remaining 12 months of your fellowship. So we're not paying criminals to stop shooting, no matter what the papers say. I promise you that. They are working, and they would tell you they are working. Their job is to get their lives together. In fact, we understand that between day 1 and day 18 month, they may shoot and injure, shoot, possibly kill again. But we don't deal with that in the context of the fellowship stipend. The fellowship stipend is totally dependent on what they're achieving within their life map. 5, we're taking them out of Richmond, taking them around the country, and taking them around the world. Anytime we leave the state of California with fellows or out of the country, and we do that several times a year, they have to agree to travel with someone they're trying to murder. I said we do that several times a year. There are rival fellows in this audience right now. Be careful. But that's the caveat. If you want to travel with the neighborhood safety director out of the city, out of the country, out of the state, you got to be willing to travel with your enemy. Some of the most transformative work has happened on those excursions. It's hard to shoot someone that you've been in Soweto, South Africa with. It's just tough to do when you're in Spain, Paris, or London, or Mexico, and the experiences you go through. And then 6 and 7, real quickly, we place a council of elders around these young men. Elder men, retired, nearly retired, of color, who ain't afraid of them, willing to go where they are and engage them about every aspect of life. Most importantly for these young men, relationships with their women. And then finally, we don't get cats jobs. We learned that just is futile. Most of these cats will tell you they want jobs, but they don't want jobs. They want money. Money, 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 money. They want money. They want money, and a job and having money are two different things, right? And so what we do over 18 months, we understand what their passion is, what they're interested in, and we find and connect them to internships that are touching those passions and interests. And then we subsidize that with a livable, California livable wage for 9 and 12 months. That's how we're doing it.
That's amazing. Really amazing. One of the things that I hear in that is an incredible level of authenticity that is sometimes hard to come by. In both the Ferguson area and in Baltimore, how do you take that energy from people who are well-meaning, well-intentioned, but really pull them into this kind of relationship and level of authenticity so that they are benefiting the mentoring movement and they are connecting in these relationships?
So I just want to echo everything you just said, whether it is the group you're working with or any group you're working with. I think the first thing that we realized in Ferguson was when you start to ask questions about kids or young people, we're always asking the adults. And it's like, when are we going to start asking the kids how you're doing? And so we get this report back, and the adults have all this to say, and no one's ever brought the kids to the table. No one's ever said to the young people, you have a voice. Your voice is the one that matters. Where do you see yourself? So that's a huge echo. I would also say this idea of ownership, of not ownership in the way that you've got to own it. We're not going to be there, but you've got to own your future. And we're going to be there to support, guide, coach, back up, do everything you said. And if we could do it earlier, maybe you wouldn't be getting them later down the pipeline. But this idea of youth voice, and I don't know how many times we do it. I know in my years, it's the adults sitting around telling the kids what to do rather than listening to the kids and let's figuring out how to support them. And we haven't necessarily transferred the ownership to them with the kind of support. And then the last thing I want to say just in support, travel. That is an amazing thing to do. We actually have one of the corporations right now planning travel scholarships for our little brothers and little sisters because they're not necessarily where the young people are that you're working with, but when they travel, they see things, they have new experiences, they then feel valued. So all three of those things are highly valuable in the work that we do. And I think on the authenticity piece, I think mentors come in sometimes, and sometimes we can just kind of almost overtrain them. It's like just affirming them that you're okay where you are. You don't have to be this amazing person. The more real you can be, and the more vulnerable you can be, but also be there for a young person. That's what changes a child's life, is when they feel like they can trust you, when you're not just so perfect, when you're not so trained up. These moments happen, and they, as all of you know, they change lives. Yeah. And so I would just end, listen, ask the questions to the young people. Quit asking your staff so many things, quit asking their parents so many things. They're all important, but what are the young people saying? And give them the ownership for their future, but support them while you're giving it to them.
I think the first way that you get the authenticity is that when you're having a flashpoint event like we had in Baltimore, Ferguson, it's just, you let the dust settle, right? Because when the flame is lit, I always say that people treat places like Baltimore, Ferguson, or issue like mentoring, like a hit YouTube video. Oh my God, I want to do it so bad right now. But then, once it's not hot anymore, we go back, and especially when you talk about young African-American men in this country, to what we normally do is we treat them like the abominable snowman. Everyone knows they exist, but no one wants to touch them. Right. They're big, they're bad, they're scary. We've been brainwashed to think that they're going to kill us, they're going to rape us, they're going to do all these things, when really, they're just kids like everyone else. They're just kids. They might be big, they're just kids. So what you have to do is, one, break down some of these cultural barriers that we have, especially around them, but also help people understand, like, you have to listen to them. I don't care if it's a police officer or someone with a mentor or a neighbor around the street. For example, I'm having this big fight right now with my personal community leader because she's upset that I asked the children what they wanted to see in their new rec center that we're trying to build, and not the 70, 80-year-olds in the community association, right? She was like, you know, old school black lady, you raise the child, you don't let the child raise you.
Watch out.
And then my response was, okay, so when we're building the senior center next year, I'm gonna go ask the children what they want to see. And the whole room went, no! I was like, so now you understand how insane you sound. This is why they don't do anything that you provide for them, because you don't ask them. They're not even, I'm 31. They don't want to do anything I want to do. So I know they don't want to do anything you want to do. They do not. They don't want to listen to Sam Cooke. I might, they don't. Oh, yeah. So you have to do that, breaking down, and that's where you have to have people, and people have to be uncomfortable. This is what I've been saying to everyone in my city and wherever I go in the country, talking about when we're having this kind of thing going around our country, in order for us to make that progression, we're going to have to be uncomfortable. Every day. If you don't like talking about race, sorry. If you don't like children, sorry. If you don't want to talk about guns, sorry. You're going to have to talk about all of that stuff that matters. You're going to have to be uncomfortable every day, because if you're not being uncomfortable, you're not learning or growing. And I'll just give one perfect example. Actually, we had a schedule the week before. So seeing the issues that were coming along and understanding what's going on, especially between police and young people in our communities, we have an organization in Baltimore called Community Mediation. And one day, one of the young women and myself, just talking because we work together for some other stuff, and I said, we should mediate between police and kids. And they're like, yeah, we can do that. This is great. So what we did is I went to one of my schools and said, hey, you 10 kids, y'all gonna go through this police mediation training. And then I went to my police district, and me and my commander handpicked 10 police officers, right? They have to do anything I tell them to do, even if they don't want to do it. And we said, we're gonna do this training. And what happened has been great. We're actually ready to do another one now. We spend an hour with the kids, hearing what they want to see from the conversation, understanding what they want to learn. The same thing with the police officers. And then we put them together for at least one, but most of the time, two-hour sessions, having them understand, because yes, it's going to be great. We have cameras on all these police officers, and they're still going to interact with the kids. But if they don't ever talk about the issues, seeing the transformation, even, and I know this is not the end-all be-all, but seeing the difference in those officers and those young people that I both know after. For example, a few weeks ago, I had a young lady say, Councilman Scott, one of the police officers from the thing had to come to my house. I know he wasn't coming for her, he was coming for another family member. He was so nice. He asked me how was I doing in school, said I was great at the thing, asked me about going to college, and I know this police officer. He hates kids. He would never in his life, never in his life before that ask that little girl, he'd even like, go sit down while I handle my business. He would never do that. But that's what we have to do for everything. People have to understand they're gonna have to listen to the children. You get in challenging people, especially around mentoring. I always tell people, they're like, I don't have the time. I'm like, I'm a mentor. You don't work more than me. I know what you do for a living. You can, You can, and I mentor more than one. You can do it. Or I said, the fire chief in Baltimore mentors. Do you work more than a fire chief? No, you don't. You can mentor. Eliminate the excuses and help them understand it's going to benefit you just as much as anyone else. I always tell some of my colleagues, there's a reason that there's a difference when I walk up on a corner in East Baltimore and then when you walk up. They see me. They know me. They know that I'm not going to walk up to them all at once, and this is what we like to do. Hey, young brother on the corner, all at once, without asking the first simple question. Change your name. Change your religion. Take care of your kids. Get married. Cut your hair. Change the music you listen to. Pull up your pants. Don't wear that. Get a job. Get a GED. Get a degree. All this stuff all at once. And they're like, who are you? And do you know my name? That's what we do. You have to have that relationship first before you can get to anything else. And that's what we have to do if we're truly going to get listening to them, understanding them, building relationship. Because you can have the greatest program in the world. If they don't feel like you're invested in them, and young people see through BS like no other, if they feel like you're not invested in them and you're not genuine, you don't have a relationship, it's all for naught.
These are the things that are taking place and happening when the cameras go away, right? There's no more...
Why would they show that on TV? That's too positive.
Right. These are the things that are happening when there's no cameras. Yasmine, in these moments when the cameras are going away, how do we keep the momentum going, the things that Brandon talks about and Devone talks about and Becky, how do we keep that momentum going and keep the conversation going and keep young people engaged so that movement happens and it's not just happening when there are fires and brutality and cameras everywhere?
It's a daily thing. It's a daily thing with all of us. I would hope all of us alike, adults, old, young, in between. Cameras and Twitter and Snapchat, all of those things are great. And they definitely help momentum, but even without those things, there's always work that needs to be done. There's always a cause, there's always a young person that truly needs us. I have a friend who would always tell me, you're alive because somebody needs you. And no matter who you are and where you come from, I don't care whether you are, from the wealthiest county in the United States, in the world, or if you're from a ghetto, whatever it is, you're alive because somebody needs you. And when you realize that, not only do you value your life, but you value other people's lives, everybody around you. We all have a role to play, no matter how small you think it is. And it's really about mindset. It's about positivity. For me, it's faith. It's faith. I am here for a purpose, and I'm only here for a very short amount of time. And I want to maximize that time. I want to be able to help as many people as I can, to touch as many people as I can, and for people to touch me and to bless me and encourage me. That's what I want. That's what I want. I don't know about you. So that, for me, that's more of a personal answer that drives why I'm here. My father is still sitting behind bars. He's 45 years old. I'm 22 years old. He's missed most of my life. My mother passed away when I was 13 years old, but I'm still here. I'm still working. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. That's why you're here right now. That's why we woke up so early, and this gentleman on 5:30 a.m. time, and so all of the energy, whether it's the little bit, the little light, the fire, the little bit if it's big, whatever that you have inside of you, continue, whatever that you need to do to ignite that, do it and spread it. Even if it's just one young person in your life, if it's your daughter, if it's your son, if it's your grandchildren, or if it's your mentee, listen, just sit down with them and just listen what they have to say, and you will just be amazed, and it will inspire you and it will drive you. So when the cameras are off, when the lights are off, we're not standing in front of a podium trying to get some money. Donald Trump, it's more than that. Money cannot buy intelligence. Money cannot buy compassion. It cannot buy those things. It really can. It won't replace it. That's all I'm going to say, but we got work to do.
With the phenomenal wisdom of a 22-year-old, I'm going to leave it at that because it's pretty amazing. So I want to thank all of you for being up bright and early, some of you traveling just to be here for this panel. We really appreciate your time, your wisdom, and your passion. Thank you so much.